I hit it. It came on? Well,
No, you muted. It was on. You muted.
Oh, it was on. Oh, sorry. It's awful to be muted. Okay, so speaking of muting, please mute your phones. And we encourage you to check your bulletin and the communicator that comes in your email and see all the activities that we have going. We also have the links for all of our meetings that are done by Zoom there and the times of the meetings that are in the building. From the service tech team, in recent weeks, you may have noticed that we've had some problems with the sound. What else is Zoom? We are currently in the process of updating our AV system in the booth and attempting to integrate more efficiently with the equipment that we use for Zoom. The multiple mics involve a considerable amount of challenge, and we are working with the system designer to improve the aspects of this. Please bear with us as these problems get worked out. It is helpful to hear from you about the audio and the visual quality as it comes up. If you are interested in learning about the UU and UUCLC, consider signing up for our next orientation class, which the sign-up sheet is just outside the door there on the table. I have another announcement working here somewhere. And from Val Rosado, an update of the directory of members and friends will be published soon. If you have not yet done so, please review the current contact information that we have for you on the list, and it's on the table out there where all those pictures are. Check to make sure that everything is okay and up to date, and also that you like the picture of you. If you don't, we'll take a new one. Most of us have aged, so maybe we might want to keep the old one. So if something does need to be updated, please fill out the form that's there and leave it so we can do that update, or you can email office@uulakecounty.org. If you do not wish to be included in the directory, please cross off your name. And if you have any other questions, please contact Val Rosado. Is there anyone who has a brief announcement on anything? We've asked you to come up here. Yes, Henry? Oh, you have an announcement. Okay, I thought you were just waiting. Well, you can hear it better if it's up here. So we are changing that for some certain things.
Hi, you may have seen in the weekly bulletin, Lake Cares is having a summer feeding program for children in Lake County. Last year, they fed 819 children, breakfast, lunch, snacks, juice. These are kids who live in poverty, and during the school year are on free breakfast and lunch program. It's $16 for one child for 1 week, and $160 for one child for the full 10 weeks that the program runs during the summer. We've supported Lake Care's food pantry in the past, but we would like to take up a special collection today specifically for the children's summer food program. There is a special collection box in the NARTHAP. You can write a check to UUCLC and put the Lake Cares Summer Program in the, whatever that line is that designates it, so we'll know where to put that contribution. They'll accept cash, and if you want to get credit for that, there's envelopes that you can write your name on, so you'll get a tax deduction for that as well. And we'll be taking this collection this week and next week, and hopefully we'll be able to help feed some of the kids during the summer so they won't go without those meals that they usually get. Thank you.
Henry.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Henry. I'd like to make a quick announcement about our building and the primary person who takes care of it, Christina Wilkins. Some of you may have noticed, and many of you not, the symbol on the front of our building, the sign with the chalice, is new. Did you know that? Probably didn't, because it looks the same as it's always looked. But it is new because the original one was 5 years old, deteriorated because of the hard weather down here in Florida, the wind and the heat and so forth. In fact, it broke a couple months ago, and the bowl hung down. We were afraid it was going to fall on someone. It didn't. We've repaired it. Christina found someone to repair it, so it's new. It's new materials that will last much longer than 5 years, so we're real happy about that. Also, our air conditioning system. Did you know that we have, I think, 5 air conditioners in this building to cool everything down? And we've had trouble with a couple of them, and it's very expensive to repair them and to change the wiring for them because some of the wiring went under the foundation, so we couldn't get to it. So that's all been changed. It's expensive, but Christina, again, led the way in getting that repaired. So she's done a great job, and I want to recognize her for that, taking care of this building. A great job by Christina Wilkins, just sitting in the back there.
Yes, thank you, Christina. Welcome to everyone again here in the sanctuary. And Dustin, can we take a moment to greet our Zoom attendees today? Wave at them. Hi, Zoomers. A lot of them are Zoomer boomers. If anyone is here for the first time or returning after a long absence, and only if you're comfortable doing so, raise your hand, and when the microphone reaches you, please tell us who you are and what brought you here today. We've got several. We'll start in the back and move toward the front.
Good morning. My name is Peggy Wilson. Some of you know me. Here I am.
Hi, Stephen Burton and my wife Karen Saltz, and we raised our kids in this area, and we now live in Beaufort, South Carolina, and are members of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, of Beaufort. And I just want to say that we attended some of the very early discussions when you were all meeting locally before the building was here. And we moved away. It's lovely to come back and see what you all have produced. Thank you for having us.
Welcome back.
Hi, my name is Linda Brocious, and this is my husband Art, and we're here to visit Jim and be here when he signs a book. And we are members of the Unitarian Universalist Friendship Fellowship in Melbourne, Florida. So it's good to be here.
Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Ellen Saunders, and I am, I suspect, still a member of Nature Coast UU, which was in Dunellen. My husband and I just moved to Leesburg last week. It's been 8 days. Loving it so far. We moved into Lakeport Square. Happy to be here.
And welcome back, because you came and visited us at our open house before you moved.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sal Cangelosi. I used to come here a while ago, maybe like 3-4 years ago, pre-COVID. And I've been living, I used to snowbird from Illinois, and I was going to UU up there in Naperville. And just moved back with my girlfriend. We play music down here, and just happy to see you guys again.
Sal's going to come and play music for us here again.
Yes.
Anyone else?
I'm Betty Hunting. I'm from New Smyrna Beach, and I'm an Episcopalian. I'm happy to be here visiting my friend Terry Soul.
We have lots of visitors and returnees today. How nice. We gratefully acknowledge the traditional lands of the Timucua Native peoples, upon whose ancient homeland our church now stands. We are blessed for this land, and we vow to care for it as Mother Earth cares for us and for all living things. All are welcome here this morning. Thank you for sharing this Sunday with us. Opening words from Reverend Cynthia.
Abraham Lincoln, 16th President of the United States, said, "It is for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth." Our chalice lighting.
Our chalice lighter today is Lee Parody. Lee, if you would come up. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys, sorrows, gifts, and needs. We light this beacon of hope, a sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of life we share together. Thank you, Lee. And now you can remain seated as we sing together, Spirit of Life.
Each week, we offer time for you to share your joys and concerns by placing a stone or stones in the sand. There is a station at both the front and the back of the sanctuary. If you wish to share silently, you may begin. If anyone wishes to share aloud, raise your hand and wait for the microphone.
Hi, my name is Lynn Myatt, and I shared before that I was concerned about my husband, Robert, because he'd been in pain for over 6 weeks, and it had been very acute pain. He's had treatment, and he's no longer in pain.
If there is someone who hasn't been named that you hold concern for, you may name them aloud at this time. For all those named, and for those whose names are too tender to speak, we collectively hold them in the light of our compassion and the warmth of our community. At this time, we remember and honor those members of the congregation who have died this past year.
This year was a difficult year. We lost 5 members. And I will be reading the bio for each of them and try to keep my voice intact. And at the end of each bio, anyone who wants to share a memory of that person is invited to do so. Please just raise your hand and the mic will come to you. Following that, we will pin their name tag on our banner of remembrance. Our first person was June Sweeting. June Sweeting was a New Jersey girl. She was born in Atlantic City and grew up in Salem, New Jersey. She got her BS in nursing from the University of Pennsylvania and a Master's of Science from the University of Delaware. She worked in pediatric and ER nursing for most of her career, and then as a nursing instructor at Rowan College in New Jersey. She did this while raising 2 children, who later gave her 2 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren, of whom she was very proud. June came to UUCLC in 2010 because she was attracted to the open forum discussion groups that we still have prior to the service. She was a member of Phyllis Gillette's hospitality team and was part of the planning and outfitting of the wonderful kitchen that we now have. June also served on the membership committee and was an avid participant and supporter of all of UUCLC activities. In the words of her partner, Russ Littlefield, who she met here at UUCLC, June was known for her sharp mind and for turning apparently naive questions into insight. All who knew her misses her quick wit and her dry humor. Is there anyone who would like to share? Down there.
Can you hear me?
There.
Can you hear me now? It's going to be hard because a lot of these are, I'll try to make it quick, have touched me in some way. June, I became close to June, and you're right. She was witty. She spoke her mind. I just really loved her. I went to see her not long before she passed, when she was in the, I don't know what's called, memory care center, and she was still witty and funny. And I know we all miss her.
Anyone else? So if our pinners will come forward. It's a little tricky getting them onto our. You can stay up here. We're going to keep you busy. Yeah.
Oh.
Nearby. That's good. Next person is Connie Sanford. Connie Sanford passed away at the age of 92. Many of you did not get a chance to know Connie. While she was a very active member here for many years, her health made it impossible for her to attend in more recent years. She did come a few times when the building first opened, and she was very excited about our being here. Connie and her husband Bob were members of UUCLC when we were still in the Women's Club, and Connie was friends with our previous minister, Susan Berryman. The Sanfords and the Berrymans had a cottage on the same lake in New Hampshire, and Connie was largely responsible for Susan coming to UUCLC as our minister. She was also in part responsible for the beautiful eagle that's in our library. It's a little hard to see it right now because the light's not in there, but it's a wood sculpture that was done by Susan Berryman's artistic husband, Peter. She and Susan ran a midweek discussion group at the Wells Fargo building office that we had for a couple of years. She was an animal lover and kept 2 cockatoos in her home. She often shared some good stories about her wild youth, including running away from boarding school. So gives you a little sense of Connie's spirit. Yeah, is there anyone that wants to share about her? Sure, we do have some folks here that know her. Okay, thank you. Kit Tatum. Kit Tatum was small in stature, but large in life energy. Kit's love of music was evident in her childhood and continued when she went to college at the University of Texas, where she majored in music with a special interest in sax and voice. She was part of a large choral group as well. Born in New Orleans, Kit was adopted at age 14 months. Her parents moved often, and Kit continued that tradition in her own adult life. Consequently, she developed great social skills and the ability to fit in anywhere, and she certainly fit in here. During her second year in college, Kit met Jerry Tatum, and they were married. She and Jerry joined the UU Church in Golden, Colorado, when they were in the process of adopting a child because they thought church affiliation would make them look good. But she said, "We hit a gold mine." They eventually adopted 2 boys and raised them in the UU churches wherever she and Jerry lived, and she had 2 grandchildren. Kit served on the RAP committee, that's the service committee, where she was our music guru. She could find a hymn or a song that fit perfectly for every occasion. She sang in the choir, and she was on the membership committee. Other UUCLC activities that Kit enjoyed included the Monday night meditation, the Graceful Aging group, the Covenant group, and the book discussion groups. She was everywhere. And also the Dharma study group. Kit helped out any place for any occasion where someone was needed. You needed someone to take tickets, Kit was there. You needed someone to start the singing, Kit was there. It was here at UUCLC that she and Bill Herman found each other and spent her last few years together. She is there. Is there anyone who would like to share?
Kit, as you said, was on the rep committee. I'm the chair of the rep committee. We don't know what we would have done. We had no prep for Kit leaving us because she was so good at doing what she did. She would search for the right music. She would coordinate with our pianist and say, I think this is great. How do you feel about it? But not only that, for the years that we were not open for COVID and we were on Zoom, she labored over finding the very best YouTubes and would send them out to all of us. And we'd say, well, I like this one, let's choose this one, or whatever. She worked, she was really a person meant for committee work. Beyond that, she was a dear friend of mine. She would check on me. She lived in Leesburg. I'd have to take my car to the Honda dealer there. And by gosh, she'd pick me up in Leesburg and either we'd have lunch or she would drive me back to Eustis. So I could be home waiting for my car if it was an overnight deal. I loved her dearly. We miss her. Thank you.
We haven't had the choir functioning recently, but we hope to get it started again in the fall when Don and I are back. And Kit was just indispensable for many years that we were involved with the choir. And oh, I just really miss her. Part of the reason I played Memory from Cats today was in memory of Kit. One thing that hasn't been mentioned that I still hear and miss tremendously is Kit had the best laugh of anybody I've ever known.
It's me again. Val, yes, because I was with you every step of the way with rap. There just aren't enough words to describe the feeling that I have about Kit. Yes, she worked hard for the church, but she was also a dear friend. When I first started with the church and first moved up here, kind of alone, I decided to have Thanksgiving dinner at my house, place, mobile home, and I don't entertain much. I'm kind of an introvert, a little bit, and I threw out the invitation, and Kit and Bill came, Stu, everybody remembers Stu, to my Thanksgiving, and with my kids, my two boys. And then she invited us the next year to her place. And sometimes Kit and I hit heads a little bit because I yacked too much and she would try to shut me up. But it was with love. And Bill. Okay, that's it. I got it. But we miss her.
Careful.
In addition to being funny and fun to be with, and very sharp and pointed in her comments, Kit embodied this studio. She was who we are. And her leaving has left a huge hole
in my heart, and I think in many of our hearts. I think we're gradually picking up the edges that she left and filling in the gaps. And I always kind of feel her cheering us on and poking us to get on with it.
Yeah, get on. One more?
So this is a tough one for me, and I hope I can hold it together. I met Kit and Bill at a meditation group when Bert and I first moved to Florida, and we would meet every week in this building where the ceiling was falling down. And oh my word, I was moving from Massachusetts. This was my first experience at UU in Florida. And I thought, oh, did we make a mistake? And what drew me so much to Kit was she was such a feisty woman. And coming from New England, I can be a bit feisty too and get myself into little problems. And I used to go to Kit and she'd go, "What's the matter, Joyce?" I would look at her and I would say, "I need a mom. I just need a mom." And she has such a place in my heart. And what's running through my mind right now is the tea, that small tea I had at my house one time. And Kit was always ready to put a hat on to do whatever crazy idea I came up with. So it is a loss, but I really sense her energy here today, and that makes me feel extremely grateful. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, everybody. Lois Sanford. Some of us were here a few months ago to attend her memorial service, so her name tag was already on the banner. Lois Sanford grew up in northeastern Ohio in an ethnically mixed neighborhood. She attributed her intense compassion and determination to help others to what she saw in the struggling immigrant families around her. She attended Ohio University and got her AA degree in child development. She married and moved to Huntsville, Alabama, where her husband worked in the space program, and later they moved to Florida. While she was raising their two children, she went to work as a VISTA volunteer coordinating a mobile eye clinic for those who did not qualify for other programs. For 5 years, she managed these clinics in immigrant camps and low-income housing projects. When the program ended, she was hired by the Broward County school system to coordinate visual screening in the schools. And during that time, she also returned to college and got a master's degree in special ed. She opened a private practice serving 3 developmental optometrists and did some consulting work, which included helping the Hopi Nation open their first school. Lois eventually moved on to working in the classroom and as a teacher for special ed, retiring after 35 years. While living in Huntsville, Lois first attended a UU church, even though her parents had been Methodists. She was attracted to the strong social justice emphasis in the church, and particularly their activism during the turbulent 1960s. After moving to Leesburg in 2016, she wanted to find a community with that kind of social justice focus. She came to UUCLC and considered it her home. From then on, she served on the board, the membership committee, was chair of Care and Connect team as long as her health allowed. She was instrumental in establishing a call list to all our members during the COVID shut-in so that everyone had contact with someone else in the church every 2 to 3 weeks. And she baked for every event we had. She's a great baker. Lois was very proud of her late son and her daughter and her adopted son. Would anyone like to share?
I'm sorry, it's me again. Like Janine spoke at the very beginning, this has been a very hard year. And many of these were my dear friends from when I first came here. And when you start losing so many, you kind of start looking at your own mortality. Anyway, Lois was another one who spoke her mind. We were really good friends, lunching together. And I'm going to tell this story. I told it at her memorial just real quick. When I first moved here, I was packed in my little white van that finally couldn't run and would hardly get through an intersection, but I'd get here. And I mentioned that, oh, I'm late, I'm sorry, my van is, she says, that's not safe. Let's go shopping. She helped me buy my little white car out there. And loaned me money. Who does that? But Lois. And I paid it all off, you guys. The only bill I ever paid off completely. That's who Lois was. That's who Lois was. And I'll never, she gave me wings. She gave me wheels.
Anyone else? And most recently, our friend Ernie Rossi. Ernie was 83 when he passed away this past May. He was born, raised, and worked in New York. He and Jenna moved to Florida after they married in 2006. He spent 6 years as a reservist in the Army during the summers and worked for many years as a data analyst until his retirement in 1992. Ernie was the president of the astronomy club at the plantation where he and Jenna lived. Ernie's passion for astronomy began at the age of 10. He owned several telescopes and taught adjunct astronomy classes periodically. He was a highly intelligent man and loved to share his knowledge with others, which he did at our discussion groups often, keeping us updated on the latest celestial happenings and space research. He was also a champion weightlifter and loved to stay fit. He had a son and a daughter from a previous marriage, as well as 3 grandchildren. He was a devoted husband to Jenna and adored his beloved rescue dog, Roxy. Would anyone like to share? Jenna's with us today.
I have lost the love of my life 3 weeks ago, and I'm still in shock. But Ernie was a good, kind man, and he was a born teacher. He would teach anybody anything about astronomy they wanted to know. And sometimes we never got to dinner because we were still telling them what they wanted to know. But he was a wonderful man. He gave me 23 happy years. Rest in peace, Ernie. He died peacefully.
Glenn over here. Oh, and Henry.
Just very quickly, I moved to the plantation in Leesburg about 10 years ago.
For
Saw that
the
they
members that are
Army,
yeah.
they do. And I went to the club, and sure enough, there was Ernie carrying the show. He did know a tremendous amount about astronomy, and he loved it. That was one of the interesting things about him. He loved it, and he had a lot of future hopes for us, manned space travel and occupying Mars and all these wonderful things for the future. So he was a great man to know and to listen. Yes, great photos of the stars and many of the things going on in the universe. Yes.
We all have lost a lot with Ernie passing. I met Ernie back when we were at the Women's Center, he and his wife, and we've carried on that conversation about what we've learned in astronomy from that time to now, what the new things are. He was always quick to update us. We always had an open ear for him because he did it in such a way that made it real interesting in a way that we could understand it, because it is a technical, highly technical field to be in, and he had a way of bridging that. But also Ernie, as a person, with his background, his weightlifting and all of his experiences he's had in life, he had so much to offer. We're going to miss the spring program we usually give. He'll give us one a year, usually on the astronomy and what's new. We're sure going to miss that. We're going to have to find a way to bridge that gap in his memory, because he was always there for us. And if anything, his scientific knowledge and his belief in improving humanity through education and this type of thing, he was an amazing person.
Anyone else?
In the past.
Seeing that, that's for sure.
Do you want to go out?
Yeah,
You don't think so?
no, I had her out just a little while ago.
So I should jump on.
You're in her way.
I don't think so.
May we always remember these who are now our ancestors with reverence and love. And may we be reminded of their great wisdom and strength as we seek to preserve and continue the heritage they have left for us. Let us share together in reading our covenant as this congregation. Oh, excuse me. As soon as it's back, there we go. Love is the spirit of this church, and through service we live our principles, our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth and love, and to help one another. It is our practice at UUCLC to give generously to this congregation that is our spiritual community. And you heard earlier that it will also be a special collection this week and next for the summer feeding program. We give as we are able, remembering both this congregation's meaning in our lives and its impact on the world. You may donate today in the wood box in the narthex or by any of the methods on the screen. Thank you for your donation today. Russ Littlefield will now share his testimonial as part of our 2024 pledge drive.
Well, this is a little hard for me. It's certainly been an emotional moment for all of us here who knew these people. So Chris Higgins asked me if I would say a few words about why I support this congregation through pledging. Well, this is my church. I don't always love it, but it's my church. Most of the time I do, but sometimes it just gets to be a little bit too much for me. And those who know me know that I tend to withdraw when that happens a bit. But I always come back. This is my place. I found a reading that expresses pretty much why I do love this place. And I think it's particularly appropriate because of what we just did, honoring those people who have been with us and who have passed now. It's called I Want to Be with People. And I know that some of you here have heard this before, but it's rich and it's worth hearing many times. It's by Dana E. Worsnip, and if you're familiar with Worship Web, you can find it there. I want to be with people. Often people say that they love coming to a place with so many like-minded people. I know just what they're getting at. And I know that they're not getting it quite right. I don't want to be with a bunch of people who think just like me. I want to be in a beloved community where I don't have to think like everyone else in order to be loved. I want to be with people who value compassion, justice, love, and truth, and have all kinds of different thoughts and opinions about all sorts of things. I want to be with independent-minded people of good heart. I want to be with people who have many names and no name for God. I want to be with people who see in me goodness and dignity, and also see my failings, and who still love me. I want to be with people who feel their interconnection with all existence and let it guide their footfalls on the earth. I want to be with people who see life as a paradox and don't always rush to resolve it. I want to be with people who are willing to walk the tightrope that is life and will hold my hand as I walk mine. I want to be with people who let church call them into a different way of being in the world. I want to be with people who support and encourage and even challenge each other to a higher and more ethical way of living. I want to be with people who inspire one another to follow the call of the Spirit. I want to be with people who covenant to be honest, engaged, and kind, and strive to keep their promises and hold me to the promises that I make. I want to be with people in a beloved community where I don't have to think like everyone else and to be loved. I want to be with people who value compassion, justice, love, and truth, and have different thoughts and opinions about all sorts of things. I want to be with people who know human community is often warm and generous and sometimes challenging and almost always a grand adventure. In short, I want to be with people just like you. That's why I'm pledging. I have pledged, and I encourage you to do the same thing. There's a box, donation box out in the lobby. There's cards there. If you haven't pledged already, I encourage you to fill out a card and drop it in there today. Thank you.
Because of time, I ask that we skip over the interlude and go to our hymn, number 119, Once to Every Soul and Nation. I invite you to stand as you're comfortable. Please be seated. I began my ministry back in 1984 as a United Methodist minister, serving a 2-point charge, a church in Beaver Meadows, Pennsylvania, and a church in Weatherly, Pennsylvania. My parents drove up into the coal country of eastern Pennsylvania with me as I began. It took us a little while to find Beaver Meadows. We drove straight through it several times before we realized we had driven out of Hazleton and through Beaver Meadows. There are about 1,000 people and about 4 miles of public roads in Beaver Meadows. I'm telling you this because every year I served that charge, I spent Memorial Day morning in Beaver Meadows. The morning began with a parade down the main road. There was a high school band, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the American Legion, a car with the 4 clergy of the town, a car with the Poppy Queen, a car with the Poppy King, cars with the town officials, a car with the students who would take part in the ceremony to follow the parade, and the Boy and Girl Scouts. When we arrived at the town green, the band would play the national anthem, the mayor would give a welcome, a rotating clergy person would lead a prayer, a student would read or recite the Gettysburg Address, another student would read or recite Flanders Fields, someone would give a speech, a wreath would be laid on a memorial to the town's war dead, The Girl Scouts would sing, "Let There Be Peace on Earth." There would be a ceremonial firing of rifles, and finally the playing of taps. And I expect if you show up in Beaver Meadows, Pennsylvania tomorrow, it will look pretty much the same. In fact, I expect if you showed up in many towns tomorrow, the ceremony would not look that much different in any of them. According to History.com, the Civil War, which ended in the spring of 1865, claimed more lives than any conflict in U.S. history and required the establishment of the country's first national cemeteries. By the late 1860s, Americans in various towns and cities had begun holding springtime tributes to these countless fallen soldiers, decorating their graves with flowers and reciting prayers. It's not clear where exactly this tradition originated. Numerous different communities may have independently initiated memorial gatherings. Some records show that one of the earliest Memorial Day commemorations was organized by a group of formerly enslaved people in Charleston, South Carolina, less than a month after the Confederacy surrendered in 1865. What are we doing in these ceremonies? For some, mourning the dead. Too many people still have family members and friends who have died in war. But many others of us don't know anyone who died in war, or know them only obliquely. A father's cousin, a friend's nephew. We show up to honor those dead, but that is not the only reason we are there. As Lincoln said, it is for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead, we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Taking part in the Memorial Day ceremony is to be part of a civic gathering of people, not just honoring the dead, but making a commitment to the ideal of this country as a nation with a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, a democracy. That tradition is threatened today as some of our own politicians and political thinkers follow Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban in his perversion of the term democracy. In August of 2021, Amanda Coakley wrote for Foreign Policy's Dispatch, Christian Democrats, spearheaded by parties like Germany's Christian Democratic Union, were the drivers of European integration following World War II. The movement's cornerstones were a wariness of nationalism, a firm belief in democracy, and an embrace of pluralism. In contrast, Orban's Hungarian brew, while seeking to appropriate the mantle of Christian democracy, is being used as a shield against growing criticism from Brussels, a vehicle to introduce discriminatory laws against minorities, and a convenient narrative to supercharge Fidesz, Orban's party's nationalism. These people are not Christian Democrats in the historical sense of the term, says Olivier Roy, a French political scientist. In Hungary, what you have is a populist party who claims to be Christian. It's purely about Christian identity. The biggest difference between Hungary's new approach and traditional European center-right politics is the belief in democracy itself. Since retaking power in 2010, Orban has pushed through constitutional and legal changes to undermine the country's democratic institutions. The courts have been stacked with Fidesz loyalists, free speech was curtailed, and the autonomy of the nation's universities was put in jeopardy. The dismantling led think tank Freedom House to downgrade the country from free to partly free in 2019. None of that bothered Orban, who declared in 2014, the new state that we are building is an illiberal state. Now, why did I give you so much background on Orban? Because in August of last year, Viktor Orban was the keynote speaker at the Conservative Political Action Conference in Dallas, Texas. An article in The Guardian reported that Peter Montgomery, a senior fellow at the nonprofit group Right Wing Watch, said right-wing leaders, and especially the religious right leaders in the United States, love Viktor Orban for the same reasons they love Vladimir Putin. This overt embrace of Christian nationalism, willingness to use strongman tactics and the power of the government to enforce so-called traditional values and family and sexuality. Montgomery added, we've actually seen some signs of that illiberalism and authoritarianism on the right in their efforts to ban the teaching of racism in schools, in their aggressive attacks against LGBTQ materials and information in schools and libraries, and even their encouragement of harassment and violence that we've seen against election officials and school board members. All those signs are signs of a disturbing embrace of authoritarianism on the United States right, and Orban is a model and hero for that to them. This week, Michelle Borstein said in the Washington Post, Texas pushes church into family leaving Texas. After 23 years in Texas, Shravan Krishna plans to move his family out of the state before his 2 young children start school in the fall. A practicing Hindu who attended Christian schools as a boy, Krishna said departure will bring a lot of pain in the short term, but an accumulation of things from growing opposition to diversity and anti-racism education, as well as book bans and what he calls Christian nationalism, forced his hand, he said. In the beginning, I thought, how can a place like this, one of the wealthiest zip codes in the state, be so backward, Krishna said. I thought, oh, they're just misinformed. But from there, it never changed. There isn't much of an uproar, and it's even welcomed, this forcing of a particular religious view. Many of us know people leaving Florida. Heather Cox Richardson in her blog this week noted that the League of United Latin American Citizens, LULAC, a Latino civil rights organization, Equality Florida, a gay rights advocacy group, and the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, have all issued advisories warning against travel to Florida. Florida is openly hostile toward African Americans, people of color, and LGBTQ+ individuals, the NAACP said. Before traveling to Florida, please understand that the state of Florida devalues and marginalizes the contributions of and the challenges faced by African Americans and other communities of color. So on that depressing note, what do we who are staying, or staying at least for a while longer, do so that democracy may survive? How do we defend the ideal of a government of the people, by the people, and for the people? The person we elected as our Unitarian Universalist Association president, the Reverend Dr. Susan Frederick Gray, said last November We hold the practice of democracy within our denomination and society as sacred. Unitarian Universalists believe that every voice matters and every voice is needed. Unfettered access to the ballot is essential to ensuring every voice is heard. To help realize that vision for American society, over the last several years, we have partnered directly with the communities most subject to voter suppression tactics, especially Black, Indigenous, and people of color, BIPOC, that experience both systemic policies and threats of violent intimidation to prevent them from exercising their constitutional rights. In both words and deeds, through our nonpartisan civic engagement initiative, You Youth Vote, and other actions, UUs have shown how much we revere defending and expanding democracy and protecting the right to vote. In fact, on election day, when voters in Philadelphia were surprised to find the polling location where they had voted for decades suddenly closed, UUs quickly moved into action to provide information and rides for voters to their new polling location. I am proud of the ways that UUs showed up in Pennsylvania and across the country to make clear, measurable differences in the nation's democratic processes. I am also gratified that so many Americans, including those from historically marginalized communities, showed their commitment to democracy and came out to vote yesterday. Remember, this was November. And in the days and weeks beforehand. And as a leader of a religious denomination that has embraced support for reproductive justice and has long supported keeping abortion legal in all or most cases, I am heartened to see that many voters chose to protect reproductive rights. Whatever the final outcome of this election cycle is, Unitarian Universalists will continue our work to protect democracy, and we remain committed to supporting those communities, including BIPOC communities, members of the LGBTQIA+ community, disabled people, women, and people living in poverty who face disproportionate impact from growing anti-democratic, authoritarian threats in this country. When you think about what you can do to help democracy survive here in the United States of America, do not think that you are expected to do it all on your own. You are part of a religious community committed to the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. It takes all of us volunteering, voting, serving, protesting, petitioning, being engaged in our civic duties. We here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Or as Reverend Lucas Herbert says, we are democracy, unruly, unfinished, unrelenting, people of rebellious joy taking to the streets, underground resilience resisting complacence, the pleasure of activism organizing into simple hope. We are democracy, people of principles taking on principalities, witnessing the worth of those called unworthy, justice just now gaining ground, integrity of interdependent existence extending living democracy in heads, hands, hearts. We know that democracy can die, ossify, brittle byproducts of bygone idealists, plotting politicians, pirating votes, corporations cannibalizing our care for the world. Look, it can wither, distend, come to an end. Democracy, today we will love you alive, make you ours, make you thrive. On this Memorial Day weekend, may we embrace this our civic duty to make democracy thrive. Our closing hymn is 318, We Would Be One. Again, I invite you to stand as you're comfortable. Reverend Wayne Arneson wrote, "This day remembers and acknowledges loss, and so do we remember those whom we have loved and lost. We hold their names and their faces in our mind's eye. We recall the gifts they gave to us through the strength of their being, the depth of their love, the courage of their dying, and the fullness of their living. In the holy quiet of this hour, their names surround us, and they live with us in blessed memory." And Thurgood Marshall, first African-American jurist to serve on the Supreme Court. Where you see wrong or inequality or injustice, speak out, because this is your country, this is your democracy. Make it, protect it, pass it on.
So now, if you would rise if you're comfortable doing so, and speak the words of our chalice extinguishing. And move forward. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now you can stay standing and we will sing our parting song, Weave. You can hold hands or you can just put your hands up and send energy to your neighbors, whichever you're comfortable with. Cookies and coffee after the service.